Hey guys, this is Chase from SNO-GO. I just wanted to do a quick video with you guys to show you common routine maintenance on a SNO-GO before you ride each time. You should make sure every single bolt is tight. And I'm talking all the way from the headset, your adjustable stem here, to every pivot bolt, to your tower, which we're gonna go into more detail. These rubber knobs, the quick release knobs, on the front too, make sure those are tight. And one that's always good to check is your through axle on your fork. From time to time over a few rides, it can back out a little bit, so it's just like a normal bike. You wanna make sure that your axle's tight, everything's tight all the time. Okay, so I'm gonna go over some specifics on the rear chassis. First things first, the tower pivot plates. And so if you see ever that you have play in the plates like this, where you wiggle them, what you're gonna do is take a 3-Allen wrench. There's pinch bolts on each side. So you're gonna take this bolt and just crank it as hard as you can without stripping it. You don't wanna strip it, but this is a bolt you wanna get as tight as you can. And so there's this bolt on the top, and then the other one's gonna be on the bottom. And so all you're gonna do is just tighten those. And you wanna do this first. The second thing you're gonna wanna do is these side tower bolts. Same thing, you want these as tight as possible. So from time to time, they can come a little loose. So this one just had a hair. You can see how much I got there. And then this one as well, about the same. So I'm just, not even a quarter turn, like an eighth of a turn. I'm just cranking it down. You'll hear a few clicks, and that's how tight you want to get these. Those 4 bolts that we just went over, you want tight and you don't want any slop. And now I have 0 slop in these tower pivots. The next most important thing is the center top tower bolt. So this is the bolt that gets the most stress. You can imagine when you have your frame on, you're leaning the bike left and right, everything's being transferred through this tower to this bolt to the back skis. And so although all the pivot points are important, the top one is specifically important. So if you ever feel looseness on this tower, I mean, if I grab this tower and I can wiggle it back and forth, which you don't see here, you're gonna wanna tighten this. And so real quick, I'm gonna show you guys how tight your tower pivot bolts should be. So I'm gonna loosen this guy real quick. I'm gonna take this all the way off because I'm gonna have to reapply Loctite now because I just broke the bond. So this whole bolt is off. So the next thing I wanna talk to you guys about as well is we always use Loctite. There's multiple types of Loctite. The 3 that we use in our shop is red, which is permanent, and you have to have heat, meaning a torch, to release that bolt. So if you use red Loctite, it's a permanent bond. We like to use blue and green, which are both medium strength bonds. And so just because we like to work on our bikes a lot and change skis out or whatever. So we like to use blue because you don't need a torch to get the bolts off. So first thing we do is we're gonna put blue Loctite on the threads here. So all I do is just put a little bead of blue Loctite inside the threads. And then I'm just gonna screw it on here. And then just finger tighten it, and then I'm gonna put the wrench on it. And you'll notice as soon as I start getting stretch, so right there, I'm getting a little bit of stress, and I'm just basically getting it that tight. It's pretty tight, like it's not freely spinning. I couldn't spin this with my thumb, but I'm not over tightening it. So like you're not cranking it like that, like, you know what I mean? Now it's like, I can't even move the bolt. It's locked in place. So one thing you can do is lock it in place and then just back it off a hair. I backed it off a little too much. So yeah, just like that. You wanna be able to spin it. You'll feel the friction in your tool, but the nut and the bolt are spinning together. So that's how tight you want each bolt. And then on the top tower bolt, I like to tighten it just a little more because this is the bolt that takes most of the stress. And so you can imagine if this bolt comes loose and there's slop in between this tower and this control arm, it gives the bolt room to break because there's a looseness and it can shear and break. Where when it's tight, that's when bolts are the strongest because there's stress on it. It's pulling the bolt. The only time you'll see a bolt break is when it's loose, and you should be checking these every ride. So as we're tightening these bolts, a test that we like to show, and I actually just tightened this a little too tight, and I'll show you. So when I lift it, and if it sticks like this, it means it's too tight. So we do this thing called a drop test where we'll pull the ski up, and if we let go and it doesn't drop, it's too tight. So what I'm gonna do is just back it off the hair. Let me see, I may have tightened this one just a little too tight as well. Yeah, this one's a little too tight. So I'm just gonna back it off just a hair. It's a little looser now. Still a little tight. I may have tightened the top tower bolt just a little too tight. Yep. Geez, well, a little too tight on that one. There we go. So there we go. Now it's turning. So I just locked that one up when I tightened it. So now it's freely turning. So now it's going to freely drop. And so what I like to do is get this to where you want this as close to sticking, where if I were to let go and it sticks, and if it is, then you just barely back the bolts off, and the moment you start seeing the drop is where I like it. So I go through every bolt, get them to where they're tight, do the drop test. If it's sticking, back them off just a hair, and you'll get the feel for it. It's just not even an eighth of a turn. We're just talking just a slight turn, and it'll make this fall. And so from here, every single bolt, I've checked all these other ones before this video, just for the sake of the time of this video. They're all the same spec. And then the last thing I want to go over, if you want to zoom in right here, every bolt, when you check before you ride, you should put an Allen key in there and spin the bolt, and the nut and the bolt should spin together. And what that means is the bond is still there with the Loctite. If you ever see the bolt spinning and the nut not, that means there's no bond between the nut and the bolt, and it'll back itself out. So the goal of these pivot bolts is to have every single one of them spin together. And that's how you know that there's still a bond with the Loctite. And then you want to do the drop test. And if you feel like, if your chassis is like really loose, then you want to tighten it. But if you feel like right now I can feel a little bit of friction as I rise this, but it's still dropping on its own. So that is the perfect spec of how tight you want your bolts. And that top tower bolt is where you want to put your most emphasis. So I put this one just a hair tighter than the other ones, and then all the other ones I'm doing the same spec. So again, I hope this is helpful for you guys to see how to just quickly maintain it. When I maintain my bike, it's no more than 2-3 minutes before I ride that day. So hope that helps, and thanks again, guys.